A very good evening, aspirants. Welcome to Daily Newspaper Analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. Before looking into the list of articles for today, I have an important announcement regarding our pre-fit test series. The third batch of pre-fit test series is going to start on 11th March 2024. It will have 63 tests in total, covering 37 half tests, 6 revision tests, 7 full tests, 10 CSAT tests and 3 mock tests. You can write the test both on the online and offline mode, but if you are opting for an evening batch, you can write the test only on the online. Since the test series has a series of tests, it makes sure that you cover the syllabus holistically. So what are you waiting for? Just enroll to the pre-fit batch, which is going to start on 11th March 2024. Displayed here are the list of news articles that we are going to discuss today. As you can see, we have chosen news articles from different newspapers. So without much delay, let us get into the first news article discussion. Look at this front page article from Hindu newspaper. Recently, Supreme Court inquired about felling of trees in Corbett Tiger Reserve for the sake of construction work. In addition, the Supreme Court also ordered the Minister of Environment and Forest to form a specialized committee to study whether construction works can be allowed in the buffer zone of Tiger Reserve or not. So in this backdrop, let us understand in detail about the Project Tiger Reserves and its protection regulation in India. Let's start with the Project Tiger. See, Project Tiger is a wildlife conservation initiative launched in India in 1973 with the aim of protecting the endangered Bengal tiger. It was initiated due to the alarming decline in tiger population across the country, primarily due to habitat destruction, poaching and human-wildlife conflict. Presently, there are about 54 tiger reserves in India. The latest notified 54th tiger reserve of India is the Veerangana Durgavati Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh. It was notified on 20th September 2023. Remember, under Project Tiger, several tiger reserves were established across India and they were designated as protected area where conservation efforts are focused on preserving the tiger population and its habitat. These tiger reserves are divided into core and buffer area, each with varying level of protection and management. Firstly, we'll say about the core area. The core area of a tiger reserve is considered the most critical for tiger conservation. It is a strictly protected zone where human activity is limited to ensure minimal disturbance to the tiger and their habitat. In the core area, activities like tourism, grazing and commercial exploitation are usually prohibited or strictly regulated to safeguard the natural environment and wildlife. Then talking about the buffer area, see, the buffer area surrounds the core zone of a tiger reserve and serves as a transition zone between the protected core area and the surrounding human-dominated landscape. While the buffer area is also important for wildlife conservation, it allows for certain sustainable land uses and human activities like regulated tourism, grazing and habitat restoration initiatives. The buffer area acts as a buffer zone to mitigate human-wildlife conflicts and support the ecological integrity of the core area. Remember, the tiger reserves are declared by the National Tiger Conservation Authority (NTCA) in consultation with the State Government of India. The NTCA is a statutory body established under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. It is tasked with coordinating tiger conservation effort and overseeing the implementation of Project Tiger across the country. It works closely with state governments, non-governmental organizations and local communities to conserve tiger habitat and ensure the survival of this iconic species. So in summary, Project Tiger in India focuses on establishing tiger reserves with core and buffer zone to protect and conserve the endangered tiger and its habitat. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this news article. Recently, Kerala Cabinet declared human-wildlife conflict as a state-specific disaster. This comes in the backdrop of increasing deaths, injuries and crop and property loss caused by recurrent wildlife incursions into human habitations adjacent to forests in the state. So with this declaration, the doors have been opened for the Kerala State Disaster Management Authority to play a vital role in mitigating such conflicts. So in this news article discussion, let us understand about what does the term human-animal conflict refers to, what are its causes and how we can mitigate this issue. Let's first start with human-animal conflict. See, human-wildlife interaction can be negatively termed as human-animal conflict if the interaction results in threatening people's safety and livelihood. So what are the causes of human-animal conflict? Firstly, there is a huge incursion by human into the wildlife habitat, which brings the wildlife into direct contact with human settlements. Secondly, there is a growth in human population along the peripheries of wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. The growing population near the wildlife habitats has been another cause of human-animal conflict. Thirdly, agricultural field along the boundaries of a protected area have brought the wildlife to forage for food in the fields. When farmers try to protect the fields, this results in direct confrontation with the wildlife. So these are all some of the major causes for human-animal conflict. So here comes the question, what can be done to help in stopping human-animal conflict? See, firstly, erection of fences along the borders of the protected areas to stop the wildlife from coming into contact with the human settlements. See, some of the fences can be used here include beehive fence, then solar electric fence, and etc. Secondly, conservation measures like destroying invasive species inside the reserves, replenishing water bodies, planting necessary fodder crops within the forest. These steps can provide the necessary life-sustaining elements for the wildlife inside their habitat itself, and this reduces the need for wildlife to venture out of their habitats. Thirdly, infrastructure development like watchtowers, installation of cameras and tracking devices can be given to the forest officials to have a continuous check on the movement of the wildlife. Finally, animal corridors should be built and maintained. These pathways play an important role in safe movement of the wildlife, avoiding man-made disturbances. So this way we can prevent major wildlife human conflict. So in this news article discussion, we saw in briefly about what is a human animal conflict, and then we saw some of its causes and how it can be contained. So these learned points. Now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this editorial article. According to the editorial article, Delhi University professor G.N. Sai Baba and 5 others were cleared of charges related to Maoist links. This decision of the Bombay High Court highlights the importance of procedural safeguards against the Strict Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So in this news article discussion, let us understand about Unlawful Activities Prevention Act UAPA through our mains answer writing approach. The syllabus for the relevant topic is highlighted here. You can pause the video and go through it. Let me read out the question for you. The Indian government has recently strengthened the anti-terrorism law by amending the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act UAPA 1967 and the NIA Act. Analyze the changes in the context of the prevailing security environment while discussing the scope and reasons for opposing the UAPA by human rights organization. See, you can divide the answer for this particular question into 2 parts. First, you can discuss the key changes brought about by the amendment. Then you can write about the reasons why human rights organization oppose the UAPA amendments. So let's start with an introduction. In the introduction part, you can write that Unlawful Activities Prevention Amendment UAPA bill is an anti-terror legislation that seeks to designate an individual as a terrorist. Recently, Parliament cleared the changes to the existing law as well as some features in the National Investigation Agency NIA Act. However, opposition parties and civil liberties lawyers have criticized the bill, arguing it could be used to target dissent against the government and infringe on citizens' civil rights. You can write these points in the introduction part. Moving on to the main body of the answer. In the first part, you have to write about the recent amendment brought in this act. First is designation of individual as terrorist. See, earlier this provision was limited to organizations, but the bill now authorized the central government to label an individual as a terrorist. The logic behind this is to preemptively curb radicalization, especially given that terrorism isn't just physical but also ideological. Second one is about giving enhanced authority for NIA. See, the Act's amendment empower NIA officers of the rank of inspector or above to investigate cases. Further, for property seizure linked to terrorism, the Director General of NIA's approval is now deemed sufficient. Third is expansion in the list of treaties. See, the inclusion of the International Convention for Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism 2005 reflects the evolving nature of global terror threats. The UAPA Act defines terrorist acts to include acts committed within the scope of any of the treaties listed in schedule to the Act. The schedule listed 9 treaties including the Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombing 1997 and the Convention Against Taking of Hostage 1979. So you can write these points in the first part of the answer. Moving on to the second part of the answer. Here you have to write about the concerns raised by human rights organization. See, the first issue is regarding the ambiguity in definition. The lack of a precise definition for terror and terrorist in the UAPA bill can lead to misuse, potentially targeting innocent or those opposing governmental viewpoints. Second concern is that there is potential for misuse. See, the power to unilaterally designate individuals as terrorists could be weaponized against dissenters. Designation without conviction could lead to civil death, where the individuals face societal ostracization, loss of employment, and even threats from vigilante groups. Thirdly, there are procedural shortcomings. See, the absence of stringent checks and balances raises due process concerns. The amendment leans heavily towards executive discretion with limited avenue for redressal for the aggrieved. Fourthly, infringement on personal rights. See, the potential for prolonged detention without formal charges, property seizure without transparent justification, and investigations based on the personal knowledge of police officers raises significant civil rights concerns. So you can highlight these points in the second part of the answer. Moving on to the conclusion part, here you can write that India stands at a crucial juncture where the imperatives of national security and individual freedoms converge. The amendment to the UAPA and the NIA Act symbolizes this intersection. So it is essential for the government to ensure that in its zeal to counteract terrorism, the foundational principles of justice, transparency, and individual rights are not overshadowed. The challenge lies in ensuring that the sword meant to protect doesn't inadvertently wound its own. So you can write very crisply in this manner with a balanced view. So in this news article discussion, we saw in detail about the new amendments brought to the UAPA and the opinion regarding it by the human rights organizations. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. See, recently the Election Commission of India proposed changes to the Representation of the People Act 1950 and voter enrollment forms. The proposal aimed to remove the requirement for voters to provide reasons if they choose not to link their Aadhar number with their voter ID card. But the Union Law Ministry rejected the proposal and stated that the Supreme Court did not specifically mandate amendments to the RP Act 1950. Instead, the Law Ministry suggested issuing guidelines clarifying that providing Aadhar detail is mandatory and voters would not be excluded for not providing Aadhar. So this is about the news article given here. In this context, let us revise about what is Aadhar seeding and some of the advantages and issues associated with it. So what is Aadhar seeding? See, Aadhar seeding is the process of linking the 12-digit Aadhar number with personal identification document like MNREGA, job card, pension ID, scholarships, and etc. So in order to get Aadhar based biometric authentication, in short called as ABBA, we require Aadhar seeding in the first place. This is about the Aadhar seeding, but the use of Aadhar based biometric authentication in the public distribution system has many challenges. Let us see the issues one by one. See, apart from Aadhar seeding, successful fingerprint authentication is required at the ration shop every month. This in turn requires a functional point of sale machine, adequate connectivity, and reasonable smooth fingers. Now, even though this extra layer of protection is aimed to reduce corruption, but evidences from Jharkhand suggest that ABBA is of little use in reducing PDS corruption. Neither seeding nor the ABBA can stop quantity fraud. So if PDS dealers give people less than their due, biometric authentication does not help. It has also led to cases of deaths due to hunger, as people could not collect ration because of a biometric mismatch at the PDS shop. It also causes difficulties for the elderly and the disabled because ABBA requires beneficiaries to visit the PDS outlets personally for fingerprint authentication. So this is an issue related to the ABBA. Now moving on to see the issue with the seeding process. See, when benefits are paid through Aadhar payments bridge system, APBS, the first step is to seed the list of beneficiaries with the corresponding Aadhar numbers. Seeding is a tedious operation and it has to be done each time a new scheme is inducted. So those who have failed to comply are simply removed from the list. Seeding often creates inconsistencies between the ration card database and the Aadhar database. Many poor people do not know the rules of Aadhar seeding and biometric authentication. Thus, inclusion errors increase the financial burden of the state, and the exclusion errors can leave poor families vulnerable to hunger. Poor people often find themselves deprived of their right in the process as well. For example, linking one's pension or ration card or bank account with Aadhar is a tedious process as data entry errors are common. So these are all certain issues faced by the Aadhar seeding process and the Aadhar based biometric authentication process. Now let us see how these problems can be mitigated. See, firstly, inconsistencies need to be resolved for successful Aadhar seeding. It is essential to deal with issues of duplication by using less disruptive methods like food coupons, smart cards, and last mile tracking of Aadhar. Then using other technology to curb corruption like computerization, SMS alert, online availability of official records, toll-free helplines, and so on can be done. And finally, government can enact privacy legislation that clearly defines the right of citizens consistent with the promise of the Constitution. So these are certain relevant facts that you have to remember about the Aadhar seeding and Aadhar based biometric authentication. So these learned points. Now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this news article. Recently, Japanese architect Riken Yamamoto was awarded Pitzer Award for 2024. So in this backdrop, let us revise about the Pitzer Award from the prelims perspective. See, the Pitzer Architecture Prize, it is often referred as the Nobel Prize of Architecture, is one of the most prestigious award in the field. It was established in 1979 by the Pitzer family of Chicago. The award aims to honor living architects who have demonstrated a significant contribution to humanity and the built environment through their innovative and visionary designs. See, each year the Pitzer Prize recognizes an architects whose work embodies excellence, creativity, and a profound impact on architecture. The selection process involves a thorough evaluation by a panel of esteemed juniors, including architects, academics, and critics from around the world. The prize is said to be awarded irrespective of nationality, race, creed, or ideology. Remember, winner of the Pitzer Prize receives a monetary award of $1 lakh and a bronze medallion with a global recognition for their achievement. However, the true value of the prize lies in its ability to highlight the transforming power of architecture in addressing societal challenges and shaping the way we live, work, and interact with our surroundings. See, over the years, the Pitzer Prize has celebrated architects from diverse backgrounds and culture. This reflects the global nature of contemporary architecture. Past laureates have included iconic figures like Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid, Renzo Piano, and Norman Foster, and some of other less known architects whose work has had a profound influence on the built environment. Remember, Pitzer Prize not only acknowledges individual talent but also serves as a platform to elevate important architectural ideas and moments. So by showcasing the work of groundbreaking architects, the award also inspires dialogue and innovation within the architectural community and beyond. So to conclude, the Pitzer Architecture Prize stands as a testament to the power of architecture to shape the world around us. So by honoring visionary architects and their transforming designs, the award celebrates the profound impact of architecture on society while also inspiring future generation to push the boundaries of what is possible in the built environment. So these are certain facts that you have to remember about Pitzer Architecture Prize. So these learned points. Now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at the science page article. It says that the 2023 to 24 El Nino is one of the 5 strongest El Nino on the record. Though it has reached its peak point, still it is influencing the global climate and causing above normal temperature over nearly all land area. It is said that this El Nino will persist through March till May, and after that there will be a potential shift to La Nina by mid-2024. This could improve monsoon rains for regions like India as well. So far we have seen a lot about El Nino, La Nino and its impact on the monsoon. So let us take a small diversion and learn about Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation AMOC and how climate change is impacting this Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. Firstly, let us briefly see about how AMOC work. See, AMOC is a large system of ocean current like a conveyor belt driven by difference in temperature and salt content. As you all know, as warm water flows northwards, it cools and some evaporation occurs. This will increase the amount of salt content in the water. The low temperature and a high salt content make the water denser, and this dense water sinks deep into the ocean. The cold, dense water slowly spreads southwards several kilometers below the surface. Eventually, it gets pulled back to the surface and warms in a process called upwelling, and the circulation is complete. So this global process makes sure that the world's oceans are continually mixed and the heat and energy are distributed around the earth. This in turn contributes to the climate we experience today. But recent study estimates that AMOC may collapse as early as 2025 or by mid-century, and the primary reason behind this will be human-induced climate change. So now let's briefly understand how climate change is impacting the AMOC. See, firstly, the AMOC plays a crucial role in the global carbon cycle by influencing the amount of carbon dioxide that the oxygen can absorb from the atmosphere. So an increase in climate change can slow down or alter the AMOC, and this could affect the carbon sequestration capability and potentially accelerate the rate of global warming by allowing more carbon dioxide to remain in the atmosphere. Secondly, a weakened AMOC due to the climate change can lead to decreased distribution of oxygen in the ocean, and it can create hypoxia, which is decreased oxygen levels, which can have detrimental effect on marine life, especially species that are less mobile and cannot escape these conditions. Thirdly, the potential change in weather patterns and precipitation due to a disturbed AMOC can have significant impact on agriculture, particularly in regions dependent on consistent climate conditions for crop production. These changes could lead to drought or excessive rainfall, both of which can harm crops and reduce yield, and thereby affecting food security. Apart from this, the weakening of the AMOC due to climate change can initiate a feedback loop that further exacerbate climate change. For example, as the AMOC slows, the northern hemisphere could cool, leading to increased sea ice extent, which reflects more sunlight back into space and potentially altering global weather pattern in unpredictable way. So these are certain facts that you have to remember about AMOC. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next part of the news article discussion, which is the preliminary practice question discussion. Now look at this first question about Pritzker Architecture Prize. See, the correct answer for this particular question is option C. The prize honor architects who have made a significant contribution to the field through innovative designs and their impact on society. Moving on, here you have to find which of the following statements best describe the concept of human-animal conflict in India. Here the correct answer is option B. Human-animal conflict signifies the competition between human and animals for natural resources, leading to clashes and negative impact on both populations. Moving on, here you have to find which of the statements given here is correct regarding tiger reserve in India. See, the correct answer here is option C. The National Tiger Conservation Authority (NTCA), which is a statutory body established under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. This NTCA only declare and manage tiger reserves in India, except that all other statements are incorrect. With this, we came to the end of the news article discussion. If you like the video, hit like, do comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. Now, thank you so much for listening.